There is a Colbert record recently. Oh, you can see my dog. Recently, a comedian or whatever you call it, he said racism is like fart because it stinks, and whenever you talk about it, people get embarrassed, or nobody want to talk about it, or people end up feeling guilty or embarrassed. There's no point in talking about racism because in reality, in the developed world, a lot of us already accept the fact that racism is not a logical thing. In fact, racism is just merely, I think, one of the traditional manifestations of the human fear for those who are different. And it can be the color of your skin, it can be your mental ability, the way you look, who you sleep with, mental intelligence, or rather if you're in a wheelchair or what. And we're not living in a killing the mockingbird era, and there's rarely a constructible, teachable moment on race because there's so many reasons for someone to be marginalized, oppressed. It became the subject of race is irrelevant to a lot of people's lives because when you think about it, you know, not getting, not going to college or being born in a single parent household, or a lot of those things have nothing to do with race, but they have much more to do with your life and your opportunity you have and stuff like that, and your own individuality, of course. So talking about race, while I still believe that it's an important topic, it is a very easy way for people to distract themselves from what's, you know, real issues that come with prejudice. And I think that the real issue is about stereotype because anyone can be guilty of being prejudicial and being stereotyping others, including myself. I certainly have my own bias. For example, I tend to talk about Muslim a lot, being the victims and being oppressed, but I do admit that sometimes I don't talk about the horrible way that some of the Muslim, some of the Muslim people in Pakistan. I just read a story about several Christians being burned alive by a Muslim mob in Pakistan, and you know, I didn't dedicate a video to that. So I do have my bias, um, but in a way, prejudice do exist in a lot of ways, and race is not the main factor, but it could be a small element within it. For example, in certain neighborhood in the city, violence often happen, shooting happen that involve black community, and it's easier to, in a way, discriminate that certain neighborhood where, you know, people live there. And because, in a way, you're not really discriminating because they're black, because you're saying, oh, it's what happened there, that what you see on the news all the time. And even for police officer, no one can deny that racial profiling doesn't still exist. I mean, I'm sure if a police officer is patrolling that area, you know, they would, they would pay much more attention, not necessarily because the people there are black, but because of just, I guess, reality. But see, it's so hard to talk about it. And but how many people live there who just happen to live there are, upstanding citizens, but they're being judged against the stereotype society hold against them. And how many of us would make an effort to be really completely neutral? And how can we really be completely neutral when we hear news like that all the time? Or if we hear news about, or if you go on the internet, and one good example is transsexuals. They are always seen as prostitutes, sex workers. I mean, are there any other exposure where minority get to make an extra effort? I think we can all admit that minority have to make an extra effort to not reaffirm stereotypes society have against them, in order for people to not have that subconscious stereotype that they can't help having in a way because of the news and everything that feed into them, and not everyone is exposed to all kind of people because of their own life situation. And I think anyone who's not considered normal by the society, we have to still put a lot of effort into co-opting our differences into an acceptable version that the mainstream society can tolerate and accept. And I think that is something that we can all admit without, you know, necessarily bringing race into it, or, talking about things that might hurt people's feelings. And so I think that's one way to talk about it. How do we really accommodate people who are different, who are really different than us? Not just tolerate them, but really accept them, really expand our idea of what normal is. How do we really um, accept, or how do we really understand diversity, and really not just a nice word, but really allow everyone to be different in their own way? And how do we really share that? That is the question.